thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. This is the climax to a trilogy of short films. Tell me about the idea to do something this way, and why did you feel this was the best way or method to do it?
So it started with another short film that I probably will never make. I know the story through and through, but because it's already transitioned into something else, I just don't have that same desire to make that one story. And I can't really remember. They all formed around each other. As I was developing each one, they were, because it's an anthology as well, so 3 completely different women, 3 completely different stories. And as they were, as I was developing them, they started to form around one another. And then through that, and in the listening, in the writing process, because that's what I say, like when I write it, I try to listen more than anything.
Sure.
And I started to hear this like very quiet note of, oh, this is around sex, this is around sexuality, this is around assault, and it all ties back into shame and how we feel that, how we extend that, how we put that onto other people, how we get it from, our communities and society. So
the subject matter is so important, and I applaud you so much for putting it out there. That's very brave, and at a time when it needs to be out there too. I think this is almost the right place at the right time, right? In doing so, you are becoming the face of these 3 women. So talk about, was there ever a thought to have different actors play the different roles, or was it always you were always going to own this and do it as you?
I think it was always going to be me. There were a couple of moments where I was like, oh, maybe we should get this person, and I was like, oh no, that's not right. and because the conception came from me, like every part of this series and every part of each film came from me at the core level.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have served it at all if I tried to divorce that at some point along in the process. And it was actually my partner who said, at one point I was like, oh, who's gonna direct this? And he's like, well, why don't you? And I was like, yeah, but I haven't really. And he's like, so? And then that was an awakening for me, because I'm not the type of person who says like, oh, I've never done this before, so I don't know if I can do that. I'm the opposite of that.
Right.
And what he said, it really checked me, and it made me have to like put myself back in check, because I was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely right. Like, why wouldn't I? And so that part, there was a definitive shift.
Nice.
Where Paul was like, no, why don't you direct it? And part of me was like, because I don't want it to be the fucking Camille show. Like, she wrote, she directed, she's acting in it, and now she's a producer and she's chasing me for contracts. Like, God, where, like, what is her problem? And so that was a little bit of an aspect of it. But there was a point after Paul had said, well, why don't you direct it, where I realized that I'm not always going to write and star in something and direct it.
Right.
But for whatever reason, this particular series of short films made me realize, okay, I have to do this, and I have to do this now. I have, like, the iron is hot. We had to hit. Funny that you're saying that, like, yes, this is the time to talk about it, but I actually wrote this maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years before the Harvey Weinstein story hit. So before the Me Too movement really found its stride. And so when people talk about it, oh my God, it's so smart. Like, it's like, no, this was happening before. And I think it's because at the heart of it, each story really is timeless.
Yes.
It's unfortunately been happening for a long time, and it will continue to happen. And that goes for number 1 as well, which is about a woman and her boyfriend who end up in the ER after she's had an abortion. That goes for number 2, about a woman who goes to visit her father in prison, where he's doing time on child sex crimes. Like, these are stories that have been happening around us for a very long time.
Was there an apprehension on any of the women? Did you find you had a harder time getting into one character as opposed to doing the others?
They were all fairly, I don't want to say easy, maybe simple
because you had a good history about them. And
exactly, yeah, because like we were there together from the very beginning, and people have said that. They're like, well, how did you, like you're directing and then how did you just, and it's like, well, because I already knew her in each scenario. Yeah. And I know that I was fortunate enough to have had that prior knowledge, which allowed it to all come together. Yeah. I don't want to say completely seamlessly, but more seamlessly than if I were to take on someone else's story and idea. There is that prep that's necessary to find the real truth in it. And because I had been doing that internally for so long, it's not even something that was consciously done, I think. For Hush Little Baby, which was number 2, shot in Toronto, about the woman and her father, that one particularly, I was like, oh, I'm in this.
Nice.
Such a powerful scene. I had such a great scene partner, Bill McDonald. He's a phenomenal actor in Toronto.
If I ask you a question, do you promise to tell me the truth?
Sure. Pinky swear.
No, not a fucking pinky swear, Dad. I can't remember. Please, Daddy, I just need the truth.
And that one, I would say maybe was the simplest. And also because it was my first time shooting and my first time directing, that I tend to function well under pressure and at the 11th hour. And I had all these people around me, and it was my first time. And I kind of went, okay, well, it's now or never. And there is no option to fuck up.
Yeah.
So you just have to do it.
Yeah.
And so that was the simplest for me to fall into. With number 3, In the Absence of Angels, here at Slamdance, I had some of my crew were crew members that I had on Hush Little Baby. So I had that
Familiarity.
yeah, and that communication already set up. So I was able to trust more, which is really great because we moved around some more. We had way more locations. We had a longer shoot.
Yeah.
And so it was more stressful in that way. I was in another city. I mean, I'm from Montreal originally, and it was always a dream to shoot in my home. But still, it wasn't something that I was used to working in, day out, like in Toronto. And I think also because it was there were a lot of intense scenes.
Yeah.
And so that pressure thing kind of came back in. Where I was like, hey, there's a lot of pressure right now, so I have to succeed. I cannot fail. And then with number 1, A Simple Act, that we shot in Vancouver, that was the last one that we shot, but it may have been the hardest, to be perfectly honest. I'm not going to be like, oh, they're all just dandy, they're so easy, and blah, blah, blah. And it maybe was harder to get into because the subtleties are stronger.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, oh, we have this intense rape scene, and oh, we have this, and we have that. Where you can.
And that one has the most build, right? I mean, it builds to a climactic conclusion.
A Simple Act?
Yeah.
It does, because I think a lot of the time we're wondering, like, okay, what's going on here? And then we finally understand when it's like this one person who can, which makes no sense at all, but it's still this one person.
Yeah, and along those aspects, talk about how the decision to shoot it in 3 different cities, because that's fascinating too.
Yeah.
Is it kind of a play on it can happen anywhere kind of thing?
I never thought of that, and I might use that from now on.
All right.
Thanks, Joe. That's good, actually. See, and this is the fun thing about filmmaking too, is that you can create and you can develop as much as you want, but there's always going to be a new perspective, and that's what I find really exciting about the medium of film. What I was saying, but Canada. Okay, so, well, I'm from Montreal originally. I was born there, lived there till I was 13. My dad has still been there, and I've been back and forth over the years. Then I consider Toronto my home in many ways as well, because that's where I started to really evolve as an artist and where I started to grow up, and
Nice.
where I became a woman. And then Vancouver is where I've been for about 2 years now. And I had traveled back and forth from Vancouver in the past, let's say 6 years. So I was very much all over, and I wanted to experience each city. I wanted to experience how the people in each city work, how the crews work, how the flow is, and also because I figured if I can know this, then when I come back to work here, then I can drop right in and be like, I got this.
Yeah.
I know how this functions.
You've developed some relationships.
Exactly, yeah. And another part of it too is that I've been I don't know if you want to call it a struggling actor or whatever the hell it is, but I'd been that for a while in Toronto. I didn't work in 3 years. I mean, mind you, I had long blonde hair, and I was a different person, but I didn't work for a very long time, and I was getting frustrated for sure. But this project wasn't like, oh, I'm an actor, so I'm going to give it a go at directing and to create a reel for myself, because I am a director as well.
Right.
And so I don't want to use it as as if it were an excuse to develop myself as an actor. I think they're all happening at the same time. But I was very frustrated with busting my ass day in, day out as an actor, and nothing happened.
Yeah, sure.
And so I figured, okay, well, if Canada's not paying attention to me, then I'm going to take over Canada.
Is that your...
Maybe. Do you have a...
Nah.
What happened to Micah?
I'm waiting for my moment. I know I can find true love until I can feel completely of myself first.
Cosmo shit right there. What do they have you reading in school, huh?
Stuff.
Yeah, well, whatever it is, that is not what we had to read. We were reading, Catcher in some Rye, Animals on Some Farm, Shakespeare. I like the Shakespeare, though. It was pretty good.
I mean, for this particular episode that you have here at Slamdance, I found it fascinating. You have a woman DP.
Yes.
Was that a conscious choice,
No.
or was it just coincidence?
Yeah. And it's funny because I did an interview for CBC Montreal, a radio interview, and they're like, so we understand that you tried to, you got this great female crew, and like you wanted an all-female crew, and I was like, no, I'm gonna correct you there. Never went looking for an all-female crew,
Right.
because I think that in itself means that we're still talking about gender.
Yeah.
What the hell does it matter?
Yeah.
And I'm very proud actually that we did have a number of women on our crew.
Right.
And it just happened. Why? Because we found the best person for the job, period.
Right.
Right?
Nice.
Anyway, so we met with some DPs, and she and I just like hit it off right away.
Nice.
Really liked her edge. And our process, our prep was really great.
Nice.
Because all we would do is like, because we're in Montreal, we would just like go to the grocery store at night, pick up some steaks. Emily would throw them on the grill. We'd pop some like champagne, and then we'd do our shot list.
That's
and talk.
awesome.
Yeah. And so we were able to develop that relationship. And as you know, in movies and film and every business, but particularly in film where there's so much emotion involved,
Yeah.
relationship is everything.
Yeah.
And so by the time we got to actually shooting, we could just...
Did having a woman though, especially manning the images that you're presenting, did that help soften the material a little bit? Did it help ease not soften? That might be.
I was gonna say because like I didn't want anything soft or anything,
No,
and Emily's
ease it, make it more ease in terms of the message you're trying, or make it more powerful the message you're trying to get across.
I think so. There's a lot of talk around male and female gaze, and I don't think that it's not real.
Right.
But at the same time, I think that we are all made up of many different energies. And
Sure. And some of them combined.
Exactly, and the fact that nobody and our ratio is completely unique.
Right.
Each person.
Sure.
I find it really weird that there's a lot of talk about like we need films by women for women.
Yeah.
We need because we've had so many films by men for men, and it's like, why do we have to separate those genders? We all have this full range of emotion.
Right.
And I think the very problem is that we're conditioned by our society to experience certain types of emotions based on what our genders are.
Yeah.
And that is what I think is fucked
Yeah.
up. So it's not that it made it easier, Emily and I, and people ask that a lot with the intimate scenes.
Yeah.
And that might be what you mean as well. Like, is it easier to have a woman with her camera up your crotch?
No, not
versus,
necessarily.
like,
No, I think that a camera doesn't lie. Camera takes whatever pictures it's going to take. But I think that a man, where a man might pull back a shot where that was, meant to be more inward, because he wouldn't get the intuition that was being presented by the woman that's on screen, as opposed to a woman would probably get that right away, and she would have been right on it, right on it.
Yeah, I mean, that could be, but I don't know if it's something that could actually be like... I think it really would depend on the person.
Right,
And
absolutely.
I think ultimately it would depend on that relationship
Yes,
beforehand.
absolutely.
Because,
And if you've talked it out, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what gender they are, because if you say, let's pull in here, they're going to pull in.
And I think there was a lot of talk of the bathroom scene, which
Yeah.
I like that part of the film. It's funny
Yeah.
because after the film, nobody ever really talks about that part because they're just talking about that one particular scene. But like, I do know that because Emily and I spoke about how truthful we want to be and like how raw we want to be, and the fact that the bathroom is a private moment for this character.
Sure, yeah.
That there wouldn't be any of like holding back, and especially she throws up, she like does all these things, and so we talk specifically about those moments that were a reaction of emotion and we liked that powerful reaction of an
Right,
emotion.
sure.
So rather than, you know, maybe coming out at a moment like that, we would just go, "Ooh, we
Right
got to
in
get
there.
this. That's
Yeah.
the good. That's the part that we
Nice.
wanted to." And that's why when we talk about the film, you know, we mentioned that it's about the aftermath as well. It's not, and that's why, you know, we chose to shoot it in that particular way, the pivotal scene, because we didn't need all this. That doesn't
Yeah.
matter. We
Yeah.
needed this.
Yes.
This, like.
And it
then
plays much more powerful that way.
Exactly, yeah, because I'm tired of seeing. I just want to say this in the right way to convey exactly what I mean. We're very used to seeing what I call pretty rape, because we only see one type of woman ever being assaulted in these, you know, large blockbusters,
Yeah.
and when rape is used as a plot point and all these things, and it's like, well, it happens to this actor that they cast because it's from a particular network that's known for casting pretty people,
Right.
and, you know, the beautiful, like, typical feminine whatever,
Right.
and so I was just like bored of, you know, you'd see these scenes and you're like, they're just doing that to, they catch their wide, they catch their coverage on both sides, and
Right.
they're like, this is what happens here, and
Yeah.
then you hear, you know, women, this is so terrible, and it's just like, it's so damaging,
Yeah.
because what it does is it desensitizes us to the very idea of what assault is.
Exactly what it does, yeah.
Yeah, and so part of, you know, when people ask my whys for this, it's another one that I will answer, and because I have many different ones, I can't always get the full explanation of it, but one of the reasons is that you hear a lot when people go, oh my god, but like, if she were raped, like, why didn't she say something sooner? And so, and a lot of that, what fuels people to even be brazen enough to be able to say something like that,
Yeah.
is because they see what they think it is on screen so often, and to them they go, that's not that bad. It's somebody going, oh, get off of me, kick, and then it happens, and you're like, oh, I feel so gross right now.
Yeah.
And so that's why we really wanted to push for the truth. We wanted to push for, like, what does it look like
Yeah.
right there
Yeah.
in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
What does it look like when it can break somebody like this
Yeah.
for their lives? Not to say that people are that we can't heal and we can't make
Right.
we can't find positive outcomes from terrible situations, but there is something that happens in any sort of trauma that causes people to change forever.
And it's a frantic. It's never. I think it's contrived. Most of the time you see it's contrived and it goes step by step. Whereas that's not how this happens. It's a franticness because you've just experienced something traumatic, right?
And that's the thing, is that, like, I'm sure it does happen like that sometimes,
Sure.
but it's not the only way,
Right.
and that's all we ever see.
Yeah.
And so that was something that, like, trauma manifests differently in every single person.
Yeah.
And it's as unique as your fingerprint. Just like I was saying about the ratio of energies and emotions, and I guess I just wanted to show something that was truthful to this character.
So.
I really enjoyed making Hush Little Baby.
Yeah.
Because as a filmmaker, and this is something that I think that melded each of the films, but as a filmmaker, I'm really interested in the peripheral.
Yeah.
And not the thing that happens,
Sure.
but the emotional extent after that
Right.
thing and on the outside.
Right.
And so with Hush Little Baby, you know, we see these articles come out all the time. Oh, there's a child sex ring sting, and look, these terrible men, these 40 men who are pieces of shit, and then we read it and we go, yeah, you're a piece of shit, I hope you die. And then we go on with our day. But we don't even think about, could you imagine opening the newspaper and reading that about your father?
Right.
That's a whole world and life and how do you,
Right.
and so that's what,
And then
see, it
all
makes me
kinds
cry
of
like now.
questions
Yeah,
come
exactly.
up. You know, just like in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with Lacey and Hush Little Baby, I was really interested in exploring what that would be like, because I really like to, I don't know if you can tell in my filmmaking, but I don't like to, like, hip hop or like to tiptoe around things,
Right,
hip hop
right,
around
right.
things. I like to, like, go for the jugular.
Right.
Those are the types of films that I like too.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I've watched so many films over my life, and as a child, you know, I did grow up lonely to an extent, as, like, you know, a woeful artist at the tender age of 8, and so now it's almost like I don't have time for things that don't really go for it.
Right.
And even as an actor and as a working actor who's basically a cog in the satellite of the Mecca, because we're in Vancouver or Toronto, Montreal, and by the time roles get to us, we have like the smaller roles, the functional roles, which are great, and I'm very grateful for having worked 5 of those, or like more than that in this past year for like network TV shows. It's great, but like sometimes I'm reading things as an actor, as an audition, I'm like, I don't give a shit about this. Like, what am I even going to do with this? Like, I don't care if your boyfriend is mad at you because blah blah blah, right? It's like I want to, yeah.
If I ask you something, Dad, do you promise to tell me the truth?
Sure. Pinky swear.
No, not a fucking pinky swear, Dad. I can't remember. Please, Daddy, I just need the truth.
I didn't hurt anyone.
Oh Lord. Body bag, magic causing havoc in these streets. Ferrari through